Bob Rush, I mean, he did an amazing job. So incredibly talented. He wrote just about every episode. We used to make a joke that the name of the person, the writer on the script, was the name of the person who was in the room when Bob wrote the episode. That's probably not true, but he was very involved, just like Carol and Neal. So Carol and Neal had created a very specific world. Bob came in and he was able to just pick it up because he also was very detail-oriented. And he understood that less is more for the dialogue. I remember Dan Lauria telling me that, like, yeah, I'd have all this dialogue, and then Bob Rush would come in and do his rewrite and be like, where'd all the dialogue go? Because there's so much more when you don't say it. And Bob really understood that. All those silent, awkward pauses, and that's what it's like to be that age. You just don't know what to say. There was an episode called Our Town where Winnie was starring in this school play, and she wanted so badly for her parents to be together, and it's like she thought that if she acted well enough and if they were proud enough of her that they would get back together. And that was one of the ways that they showed the struggle that she was going through. And then there was a scene, and I'm trying to remember what episode it was, but there was like an outdoor barbecue, and that's when I think that we learned for the first time that her parents weren't together. And I remember that being a somewhat emotional scene. But again, like, what's going on? Like, we didn't really get to interact with her and what's going on. It's from Kevin's point of view, so it's what he sees and what he's sort of detecting. And then in the accident episode, that's when we see Winnie's character sort of falling apart, like hooking up with the wrong guys and getting in cars where the guys don't know how to drive yet, and she gets in this accident. And that was, it was fun to play because she gets rebellious for the first time. Like, I never really got to play that before. And so I remember the ice skating rink, like blowing off Kevin and really having fun with that. With playing the rebellious Winnie, which we didn't get to see very often. People would come up to me on the street and say, "How could you do that to Kevin?" I'm like, "Dude, I didn't write it. I'm just an actress. Just don't blame me. I'm the messenger." Yeah, no, I know. People would get actually angry at me, like angry because I was not being nice enough to Kevin. Like, it's pretend, right? Kevin was just as imperfect as Winnie. However, the show is from his point of view. So, of course, people are going to sympathize more with him. Kevin and Winnie always had an understanding that they'd always be there for each other no matter what was going on. So when one of them was being a jerk or not whatever, being themselves, they always knew that ultimately they were there for each other. We went on this field trip, and then I ended up leaving him for this other guy. And that was a powerful scene, the breakup scene. I remember, because it hadn't been that long before that I'd actually broken up with my first boyfriend in real life. And I remember as an actress learning how to channel that memory into the scene, and so it could be really authentic. And that was a sad episode. The two buses leaving and then they part ways. I think I cried when I watched it, even though I was there and I knew it wasn't real. We didn't know it was going to be the last episode when we were shooting it. We knew it might be the last episode, but we didn't know for sure. I think we were all in denial about the fact that it could be ending. So we were like, well, they're juniors in high school. Why not go one more year and then have them graduate? That makes sense. But that's just not what ABC had in mind. But we didn't know. So when we were shooting it, we were like, well, maybe this is a goodbye. Maybe it isn't. Probably better that way. If we'd known it was the last episode, I think it would have been hard to get it done. The storyline had that feeling about it that if it were the last one, then it would make sense. It would have closure, the only kind of closure that the Wonder Years could give people, which is always going to be bittersweet and nostalgic. Kevin and Winnie don't end up together. Jack Arnold dies. I mean, this is just life. Just like it handled every episode of the show itself. Things aren't perfect. They're struggling to stay together, but they're also struggling to remain kids. And the whole line about Peter Pan, it's not like Peter Pan, is it? No, you have to grow up, and that means that things have to change, and you have to let go of certain things. And this is them coming together to try to just bond for one last time before they know things are going to change. Mr. Collins, the math teacher, who was such a huge influence in Kevin's life because he believed in him and then he passes away. I mean, that touched a lot of people. A lot of people have been lucky enough to have one teacher in their life who really focused in on them and said, I'm going to help you, and made them feel like they were worth being helped. And that belief in a student is huge. And again, this show just knew how to honor the feelings and the things that were important to kids in their life, not from their parents' perspective, but from their perspective. And having teachers that are really, truly influential was part of that. People talk a lot about my first kiss. People come up to me and say, was it really your first kiss? I think the pilot touched a lot of people. It was just an amazing episode in so many ways. The accident, our town, people mention that one to me. More than even a specific episode, people just come up to me and say, I really wish that Kevin and Winnie had stayed together at the end. I'm like, I'm so sorry. It wasn't my choice. I would have kept Kevin and Winnie together only because it would have helped so many of my fans. I get people tweeting me still today saying, I just watched the entire series and I can't believe we didn't get together at the end. I'm completely depressed. I don't know what to do with myself. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Pretend that it went the other way. It's just a story, but because people get so invested in the show, which is a wonderful thing, then they really experience the highs and lows, and then when Kevin and Winnie don't end up together, they get depressed. That makes me sad. It's just a show, I promise. It was so much fun to work with Crystal on set. It's not often that you get to work with a sibling, and we had a lot of fun. There was a scene at the ice rink where they're eating French fries and getting like in the French fry fight, and I'm like getting jealous. That was fun. And there's a scene where she's running for office, and we bump into each other at, I think it was at a restaurant. Anyway, it was fun because Crystal played my nemesis, and in life we get along great, and we always have. So it was fun to play that. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. That is Becky Slater. That's the episode where it was, do you like him or do you like him? Michael Landis and I had a kiss in that episode, and we were both really nervous about it for some reason. And because we weren't given any specific direction, they just said, action. And we were looking at each other, and we didn't really and they go, cut, okay, we gotta teach them about the birds and the bees. And the whole set erupted into laughter, and I was so embarrassed. He's like, okay, do this, put your arm here, and then lean in, and then kiss. We're like, okay. And we did it. Yeah. I got a lot taller than Fred for a while, and so literally what we would do is, in fact, St. Valentine's Day Massacre, there was a scene where we're walking down the sidewalk, and literally I walked in the gutter, and he walked on the sidewalk. So that our heights would be about the same. He'd be a little taller. All the time. Apple boxes, they would just tape a whole row of apple boxes together so that I would be taller. I mean, he'd be taller. They would tape an apple box that would go the length of a room, and just so that I wasn't towering over Fred, because it looked awkward. There's a scene where we're dancing. I think maybe episode 6, maybe. We're dancing and I'm a little taller. Yeah, there were a lot of kids. I mean, they were extras, most of them, and it was to me normal. Again, nothing to compare it to. So there were a lot of studio teachers and a lot of schoolroom set up so everyone could get their school in. It's a lot to manage. The thing is, as a kid, you're not really standing around waiting to shoot a scene very often, because as soon as you're ready, you go to the schoolroom and you do work. And even if I'd gotten my 3 hours, I still had more to do, and so I was always in the schoolroom if I wasn't actually acting on set. So I was here and then there, here and then there. And everybody knew that I was a big nerd and that I liked to study, so it's where's Danica? In the schoolroom. Not being social, being studious. Fred just tried to get as much school in as he could, but he was in every single scene, so it wasn't very often that he had extra time. Actually, there was one day that he had off. And it was because of the R-Town episode, because he was shooting me from above, and the stuff on the stage that happened, we shot that in one day, and he actually had the day off, which is the only day he ever had off on the shooting schedule. Well, at that age, at least, you can only be on set for 9.5 hours, and 3 of those are school, and 1 is lunch. So it's an insane schedule, but it's not like it is when you're an adult and you're working 14, 15 hours a day, and there is no school. that's it. Ken Topolsky did a great job of, like, if we had an event at school, he would try to work around it. Like, I had singing recitals, and he would, like, work around that, and I think we all got to go to prom, and they tried their best. They did a great job. Most shows don't take kids into consideration at all. We all tried to figure out what city we were in. It never snowed. It rained around Christmas time, so we're thinking, okay, West Coast, but then they wore that New York Jets jacket all the time. So he must have just been a fan of that, but we were really on the West Coast. I don't know, Fresno? I don't know. Suburbia, somewhere on the West Coast. I was such a newbie actor at the time when I started doing the show, and I didn't know how to speak up for myself. I was really, really shy on set. So there was this one time, I remember, I think it was in the second episode, we're standing on the street, I'm wearing these really loud pants, which I hated. They had flowers all over them, and the sun was in my eyes. And I was like squinting and blinking, trying not to, but I never said anything. And even to this day, if I see the scene, I'm like, oh, there I am, like blinking and squinting because I was too shy to say something to anybody. There it is. The other time, there's a scene where it's actually one of the kisses. I don't remember what episode it was, but Kevin is wearing these goggles, and we're like on my back porch or something. Anyway, I come up to him, we have a scene, and then I kiss him and I run off. But I was eating a carrot, and I was chewing the carrot and trying not to like look like I was chewing, and they said action, and I was like still chewing, and they were like, but I thought I was being really cool about it, not showing it. And then I heard, cut, are you eating something? I'm like, I was so embarrassed. Like, because what was I going to say when they said, okay, we're ready to shoot, rolling? I was like, excuse me, I just need to finish chewing. As an adult now I would, but at the time I was way too shy and way too timid, and I could never speak up for myself yet. So I learned on set, it's okay, because otherwise they can't shoot. Just go ahead and say something. I loved shooting that scene jumping on the bed, because Kevin had been making fun of Winnie, like going around town, making fun of her, impersonating her, putting a hanger on his shirt, saying, oh, I've got such good posture. I'm like Winnie Cooper. What is it? I walk around like I've got the hanger on my shirt. And I found out about it. Winnie Cooper found out that she was being made fun of and said, okay, well, you got the stomach flu? Let's have a little fun. I'm going to jump on your bed. And I remember Neal and Carol being, okay, just jump up and down, like, and they're really encouraging me to just get down and dirty with it, because I was always so prim and proper and neat and tidy and shy, and they're like, all right, it's time to let your hair down. I was like, okay. Winnie learned that she's human and fallible, and in that accident episode for sure, and that she had to take a step back and say, okay, I need to deal with stuff and not just push it aside and act out. But we don't get to see as much of her life. We only get to see bits and pieces and have to kind of put it together. So for me, Winnie remained someone who held on to her sadness. And, it'd always be that piece of nostalgia for Kevin. In my real life, I was graduating from high school, so it was actually really good timing, because then I could be done with that chapter of my life and go on to college and have it be a clean break. But for the show, I thought it made more sense to continue. When I got to college, I thought I was going to be a film major because I wanted to try the other side of the camera. And I got there and I started taking a couple math classes, and I was like, this is really cool. And so then, and I was still acting. The first year I did a couple TV movies, and then after that, when I decided to be a math major, I was like, this is too hard to juggle both. So I was like, wait a minute, let me see. I'm not under contract for a series, and I'm not mandated by the state to go to school anymore. Why am I doing this to myself? Like, trying to juggle the two things. Take a break from acting and just study math and just get really good at it. And I loved the feeling of just like kicking butt at math, because it was so, it made me feel so capable and so like strong and valuable for something that had nothing to do with Winnie Cooper or the Wonder Years. Because when you're a child and you're praised like every day for this one character that you're playing, and then that character doesn't exist anymore, you're in danger of believing that you don't have any self-worth anymore. Like, what's my value now? And what would it have been if I didn't have this character? So for me, math was like my savior, because then I was like, oh, this is who I am. And look at me, I'm like making a name for myself at UCLA, doing really great at math, and it felt so empowering. And then it was amazing to me is how many people would come up to me on the street and say, why are you studying math? Why would you do that to yourself? I'm like, because I like it. And then all these women would say, oh, I could never do math. I was never good at it. I just don't, I had this one teacher or this one experience. And I was like, wow, so many women think that they're not smart because they can't do math. And they can do math. They just had the wrong teacher and they had the wrong experience. And because society has this stereotype that tells us that women aren't going to be as good at math, then they believe that. And the first time they hit a stumbling block, it's not just a temporary stumbling block, it's evidence of what they've known all along, which is that they can't do math. So I was like, oh my gosh, I have to do something to change this. So I was able to take my entertainment life and my academic life and bring them together and write math books to inspire girls in math. And I am eternally grateful for the Wonder Years experience, because of that, that's what put me in the public eye in order to sell the books. The parents all know me from the Wonder Years, and the new generation of kids know me as the girl on the math books, which is so awesome. And yes, my experience studying on set and living that dual life prepared me